up with other European nations on Ukraine and on NATO, because our strength is our work with allies, which is why we made the promise at the election. You've seen it delivered since, that Britain, under Labour, has reset our relations with Europe. Ben Wright, BBC.
Thank you, Mr. Healey. I mean, the German government has said that they believe Russia could attack NATO within 5 years. Do you agree with that assessment? And if you look at the spending in Germany or Poland, they're ramping it up much faster than we are. The budget's coming up. Do you need more money quickly from the Treasury to put Britain on a war footing? And can this effort be done, be candid with people, without taxes going up?
We can't turn around the problems of the last 14 years overnight. We produced the Strategic Defence Review precisely to give us that vision for the future, to set out the challenges of transforming our armed forces, to make them more ready to fight still, more capable to deter, alongside NATO allies. We set out that NATO first commitment because we recognise that Britain won't fight alone, we won't deter alone, but we have to lead the way, and we have to do so with allies. And it's that long-term commitment, that certain decade of rising defence investment, that has meant that we've now also seen the rising levels of private investment. And so I, in the last year, have spent as much time with investors as I have with industry. I've spent as much time with innovating small firms that hold the key for future capabilities that keep us ahead of our adversaries that I have with the traditional defence businesses. And it's that combination of fresh investment, transformation, and a vision that sees the strength of our British industry as essential to equipping our armed forces and essential to providing a greater deterrence against anybody that would attack us in the future. Ellen Milligan, Bloomberg, please.
Thank you. Can you give us more detail on the Russian ship pointing lasers at our pilots? How much of an escalation is that? And on the EU Safe Weapons Fund, was any progress made last night at the dinner between the Prime Minister, Germany and France? And with the deadline coming next week, is no deal better than a bad deal?
So on the Yantar, this is the second time in a year that it's entered UK waters. It is part of a Russian fleet designed to put and hold our undersea infrastructure and those of our allies at risk. It isn't just a naval operation, it's part of a Russian program driven by what they call the Main Directorate of Deep Sea Research, or GUGI. And this is designed to have capabilities which can undertake surveillance in peacetime and sabotage in conflict. And that is why we've been determined, whenever the Yantar comes into British wider waters, we track it, we deter it, and we say to Putin, we are ready. And we do that alongside allies. You saw this last year in the way that Britain led the response to attacks on critical infrastructure with other Baltic and Nordic nations, and then NATO stepped in as well with their operation. So it's a demonstration, if you like, of a British readiness to act, a British capability to act, because make no mistake, we will not tolerate a threat to the British people's essential connections underwater. And on the SAFE programme, we were pleased when we signed the UK-EU Security and Defence Partnership. It was a milestone in resetting relations with Europe. We recognise, like President von der Leyen did, the importance of all European nations contributing to European security. So we've negotiated seriously throughout this period, for participation in SAFE. But we've always made clear, whilst we were willing to pay a fair share of the costs of this programme, any deal had to be good value for money for our British taxpayers, had to be good value for our British defence industry. And I hope the Commission will get to the point that we can participate, but whether or not we do, in or out of SAFE, make no mistake, we are doing the deals with other European nations so that British industry and the strengths that we can bring to future wider European security, we will continue to do that in or out of SAFE. We will continue to win the export deals that benefit Britain. We will continue to provide the systems and weaponry and the innovation that helps make Europe safer. Rob Powell, Sky.
Just to follow on from that on the Yantar, is this the first time that lasers have been used by a Russian vessel against pilots? And how dangerous is that? What are the risks? And also, how will the UK government be responding to this?
Clearly, anything that impedes, disrupts or puts at risk pilots in charge of British military planes is deeply dangerous. This is the first time we've had this action from Yantar directed against the British RAF. We take it extremely seriously. I have changed the Navy's rules of engagement so that we can follow more closely, monitor more closely the activities of the Yantar when it's in our wider waters. We have military options ready should the Yantar change course. I'm not going to reveal those because that only makes President Putin wiser. But I would just say to you, look at what we did last time. When the Yantar was in British waters, we surfaced a nuclear-powered British attack submarine close to that ship. A submarine that they did not know was there, that had helped track its every movement before. And look at what I'm going to do this afternoon. I shall go to Plymouth. I shall open a new factory, a British-based factory that has come directly from the Trinity House Agreement with Germany last year, with fresh investment into the UK, where we can start to design and manufacture the sea and undersea drones that will help reinforce exactly the sort of security that is threatened by the actions of Putin and his spy ships like Yantar. Charlie Parker, The Times.
Thank you. What do you make of the Defence Committee's assessment that it's highly likely the US will withdraw from Europe under President Trump, and its subsequent call for Britain to rapidly replace its American military systems?
Sorry, whose assessment was that?
The Defence Committee's in its report today.
I take a different view. The British government takes a different view. The Prime Minister takes a different view, and I would suggest the Select Committee looks at the commitment that President Trump and the US made back at the NATO Hague summit in June, where the US led the way alongside the other 31 nations in NATO with the UK in making that long-term commitment to NATO, that long-term commitment to increasing defence investment, because we recognise that together we need to step up the deterrence, and we are. We need to step up our capabilities to defend the wider Europe, and we are. And we recognised also that security through NATO in the Euro-Atlantic area is indivisibly linked with wider security in the Indo-Pacific. I just say to the Select Committee, the strength of NATO is not just about the defence of Europe, it's about the defence of America too. That was the founding purpose that Britain played the leading part in establishing NATO in the first place. It's as true now as it was then. So I disagree with the Select Committee on that point of assessment, but they're right to say Britain must pick up the pace of what we do in the future, and that's exactly what we've been doing since July last year as a new government. Kieran Stacey, Guardian.
Thank you. Can I ask a little bit more about the threats that we learned about yesterday coming from China, especially on LinkedIn? Do you know if any ministers or government advisors were contacted over LinkedIn in this way? Do you have any intelligence on whether these are real people or not? And is there any advice that you're issuing either to government officials or to the public at large about using LinkedIn?
In reverse order, Kieran, the Speaker issued advice to all MPs. The Speaker, with the head of MI5, set out the nature of the spying threat that had been established. I have no information about whether officials in government were subject to the same sorts of activities. And the Security Minister made a statement in the Commons yesterday which set out the confirmation about the new espionage plan the government has put in place and set out details of 170 million in extra investment that will go into securing the communication systems on which government in particular relies. Emilio from Playbook, please.
Hi, thanks very much. Why have we done a deal with Turkey to sell them our jets when they are the third global largest importer of Russian oil, funding the Russian war machine?
Because Turkey, like the UK, is an important member of NATO. Because Turkey, like the UK, is a major nation involved in the support for Ukraine and the plans to lead the coalition of the willing if we can get an agreement between Putin and Zelensky to end the fighting. And because working with other NATO allies together, bringing yet another nation into that group of typhoon-flying nations allows us to strengthen that wider European security, to respond to this new era of threats that we face, and it allows us also to boost the direct investment that underpins, in this case, 20,000 UK jobs. So this deal, the biggest British fighter jet deal for 20 years, will secure those jobs for years to come. And then finally, Arj Singh, please.
Hello, Defence Secretary. I wanted to come back on the Safe Rearmament Fund, if I could. The two sides, according to reports, are really, really far apart on this. The EU's demanding billions of euros. We're offering hundreds of millions of pounds. How do you rate the chances of a deal by the deadline in, I think, 12 days? And, I mean, what's your message to the EU on this, given the threats to European security as a whole?
My message to the EU is what it's always been. We want a deal. Back in May, the President von der Leyen talked about a deal within weeks on SAFE, and we've been negotiating at each stage, ready for a deal, but also clear. Clear that we're ready to pay a contribution to the costs of running the scheme. That's fair. Ready to pay if there is good value for money for our taxpayers and our industry. And we've waited weeks within the negotiations for the chance to see the European proposals in some important areas. And for us, we're ready to be part of this scheme, but we're not ready to be willing at any price. And for us as the UK, we have an industry that's second to none in Europe. We will do these deals with other European countries. We will play our part in reinforcing European security. And we recognise that responsibility we have as Britain amongst European nations, particularly those in NATO, to play that role in future. And we will, in or out of SAFE. Thank you all. Thank you very much. And to those of you who are due to come with me to Plymouth, and look forward to seeing you down there at the factory. Thank you.